Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel, Accessibility and Exhibition, Take Action with Resources. I'm really glad to be here today with you all in this wonderful panel. My name is Cassidy Diamond. I use she, her, and they pronouns. I am a white woman with short curly hair that's shaved on one side. I'm wearing a hat and have a green shirt on today. And I am the Director of Programs, Events, and Accessibility at a nonprofit film organization called Full Spectrum Features. I'm also the founder of the Film Event Accessibility Working Group. And before we get started, I think we should just get to know everyone on this panel. So I'm going to hand it off to the first person at the top of my screen and welcome Krishna Washburn.
Hi, everybody. My name is Krishna Washburn. My pronouns are she and her. I'm reporting from the Darkroom Ballet Dance Studio up in the beating heart of Central Harlem in Lenape-Ho-King, New York City. I am the co-director of Telephone, along with the choreographer and filmmaker Heather Shaw. Telephone is a documentary film which is about audio description for dance. I also teach traditional blind dance technique from this very studio, and I teach anatomy for blind and visually impaired people. It's great to meet all of you.
And we'll bump over to Cheryl Green.
Thank you. Hello, Cheryl Green, she, her pronouns. I am a white Ashkenazi Jewish woman, and it is Libra season. And behind me, there's a big golden banner with a Libra symbol drawn by Storm Miguel Flores. I am calling from Portland, Oregon, which is home of the Multnomah, Clackamas, Cathlamet, and many other bands and tribes. I make my living primarily as an access artist. So I focus on audio description, captions, image descriptions, transcripts. I also produce a podcast and have made some documentary films. All of my work, I am chronically ill and invisibly disabled. All of my work comes from and is part of disability community, CRIP community. And I am a student of Krishna Washburn, audio description for dance, and so delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Shayna.
Hey everyone, really glad to be here. My name is Shayna, and I like to joke that I'm a triple threat because I'm South Asian, female, and a wheelchair user. I am calling in from Nishinon Land in Sacramento. I have tan skin with large black glasses, long black hair, and a yellow floral blouse with a blurred background because my room is a mess. I am a screenwriter, and I've written on 3 Netflix animation shows, and I'm currently the co-director of Superfest.
Thank you, Shayna. And next we have Kibo.
Hi, I am Kibo Drew. I'm the managing director of Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project, located in Ramaytush Ohlone territory, also known as Yelamu. But I am here today on Lenni Lenape territory in Philadelphia. I am a medium-toned, racialized as Black woman, fat, Black femme, disabled, and cisgender queer. So I'm doing all the things all at the time, all at once. And I'm happy to be here. QuackMap does film training. We have a film festival. We do film distribution. And one of the films that I help to co-produce and executive produce and also write the story for is Traveling. So we are just really enjoying where everything is. So thanks.
Thank you all so much. As you can tell, we have a powerhouse of a panel here today. I forgot to say where I am. So I am currently in Chicago on the land of the Council of Three Fires. And I am so excited to be here to build on the conversation that we started at Mill Valley last year. Last year, we convened a panel where we were speaking about the why of accessibility, which I think is a really important step into this process. Very often people start with offering tips and solutions and resources. And I feel like very often those things can go underutilized or aren't sustainable if people aren't truly understanding why accessibility matters and why it's important. So I'm really happy to be here today to build on that, why accessibility matters, into the next step of how and why authentic accessibility matters, why thoughtful accessibility matters. And I'll just start with a little bit of a preface. As my work in the Film Event Accessibility Working Group, I am one of the producers of the Film Event Accessibility Scorecard with Forward Doc, which is Documentary Filmmakers with Disabilities, and the Film Festival Alliance. And we're getting ready to work out our year one report of that scorecard. And I will tease just a little bit for all of you all, you're getting this information first, that part of what we're pulling out of that scorecard is 3 of the things that seem to be the top issues or accommodations and needs of folks with disabilities at film festivals that is not currently being met, is captioning, audio description, and clear communication on your website and with your staff. And I feel like these are 3 issues that this panel is very equipped to deal with and talk about. And I feel like they're really easy intro steps to getting to understand accessibility and how you can implement it as an organization. And hopefully later on in the panel, we'll have time to get to some other things that we all value as accommodations that can be free and low cost as well. We don't always need to lean on budget and expense as a reason to not be inaccessible. That's never a good excuse. Okay, Cheryl, we'll start with you. If you could give everyone just a brief overview of what captioning and what audio description are, and we'll start from there.
Sure, yeah. First of all, I don't do captioning or audio description for compliance. So I just am never going to talk about you need to because the law says you need to. Why captioning and why audio description? Because it's part of art and culture. People who rely on or love captions and audio description don't have access to your content unless you provide those pieces. They're kind of like interpretations or translations. It depends. There's so many ways to look at them. But, in a crude way, you could say it grows your audience. But it's also about equity. If you are, especially when you have a film where you have a strong, this target audience, I have a film with a message, I need X community to get this message, I'm going to tell you that there are caption users and audio description users in whatever that community is. There is not a separate racial justice, reproductive justice, environmentalism, and then captions and AD. Caption users and AD users are within every community and are producing art and culture and work from every community. And so we need these pieces of access to be built in for everyone to both make them and enjoy them.
I love that, Cheryl. We hear often, captioning has become a little bit more mainstream, or it's in the zeitgeist a little bit more. People are thinking about it, right? A lot of social media is captioned. People are getting a little bit more used to it. And we also hear a lot of companies popping up that will remain unnamed that maybe use computers to create them, or non-disabled folks to create these assets. And I know that a lot of your work, and I would love to also hear from Krishna on this, is talking about the importance of how these assets are created, and the importance of having disability representation in the creation of these assets.
Sure. And not just disability representation. When somebody comes to me and they've got a queer and trans BIPOC presentation, I'm not the one to caption it. I have a colleague, Storm Miguel, who made that beautiful Libra poster, who I pass those captions to because he is better suited to caption that content. I don't want to make a binary between disabled access workers and non-disabled, or even AI or AI assisted access work and non. Because of my disability, I can no longer transcribe by hand the way I used to 25 years ago. So I rely on AI to build my transcripts, but then I am editing, then copying, proofing, doing research on the spelling, doing research on the culturally sensitive and culturally appropriate terminology to use. So I'm not here to knock AI or non-disabled people in particular, but the access is part of the art. It just is. Your film is not done until you have added the access that you're going to add. However much access it is. If it's only one piece, you're not done until you've added that piece. So I don't look at it as my film is finished. I've finished post-production. Now I'm adding access. It's an afterthought. That's where people run into budget issues because they didn't plan for it. That's where people start going to those budget companies. And let me tell you, some of those worst captions coming from a company that has just a few syllables in its name, those are human captioners, and they are craptions, which Ricky Pointer came up with that name for auto-generated subtitles on YouTube, craptions. But I'm here to tell you, it takes me longer to correct somebody's captions made by this 3-syllable company than it does to just transcribe and caption them from scratch. And those are human made. So again, we're not bashing AI. It is about care. It is about considering accessibility art. It is about valuing the audience that wants and needs this accessibility. When you value that audience as much as you value the audience that doesn't, you are going to put the care and compassion and cultural sensitivity into making them. I'm not supposed to talk you. I'm talking I. That's how I do it. That's how I like to think about it. So I'm always in dialogue with filmmakers or people in the film. As Krishna very well teaches, ask people, what is your film about? Who are you? How do you spell your name? Ask. I don't like to keep this stuff a mystery, and it shouldn't be mysterious. So I'm in dialogue all the time so that I make stuff that, yes, is legally compliant, but primarily is beautiful and immersive.
I love that, Cheryl. I would love to toss it to you, Krishna. We've heard your name dropped a few times here in the audio description space. I would love for you to describe your approach to audio description and how you work with that form.
Well, I think it's important for me to just say that Cheryl is an amazing student, by the way, and really has such a powerful artistic commitment to the work that she does. And I'm a very lucky teacher. I have the best students that any teacher in the world could ever have. When I think about audio description, I don't think of it as an access tool. I think of it as art for blind and visually impaired people. And as Cheryl alluded to, I do not think high quality audio description can be created in a vacuum. If you send your film off to a company and just expect to get it back very quickly without having interactions with your audio describer, it's very possible that the purpose of the reason why you made your project is not going to be getting across in the way that you intended. I really advocate for audio describers having real access to the art makers themselves. And I really also advocate for art makers to learn about audio description, listen to audio description. The narrative, understand these characters, understand this story. Is it keeping you in the experience, or is it taking you out of the experience? Now, my particular field is actually audio description for dance, which I actually think is probably the most challenging form of audio description because the performers don't speak. And very often you don't hear the body movements of the dancers. And sometimes the music helps, sometimes it's not helpful. So an audio describer for a dance project like a screen dance project as telephone is, there really needs to be a certain sensibility about like, why was this made? What should I be prioritizing? What should I be paying attention to? What is the purpose of this particular piece? Who can I talk to? Can I talk to the person, the directors? Can I talk to the performers? Ask them what their experiences were like? I really advocate for that degree of communication, because otherwise, I love the word that Cheryl used, equitable. You're not having an equitable audience experience. If you have a sighted friend and a blind friend who go to a film together, you want them to be able to have a conversation about the film itself afterwards. And it's not like, oh, the sighted person gets to talk about the film and the blind person has to be like, well, this was my impression of the audio description. If that's what your blind person in the audience gets the impression of, and that's like all they've got to work with, something's gone wrong. You want them to be able to have a conversation as equals. So that's my philosophy on audio description. Thank you so much, Cassidy.
Thank you, Cheryl and Christian. I think this is really great advice for filmmakers, right? To take into consideration. We are an ecosystem, right? Of we all need to support each other through this. And so I do want to kind of talk to Shana and Kibo as festival folks, right? So we have films that come to festivals with and without audio description or captioning. Both of your festivals are prioritizing these accommodations for your film. So I'm curious how you, and maybe we'll start with you, Shana, how does Superfest prioritize showcasing films with these assets, and how can festivals help support the use or more use of these wonderful tools in the films that they have at their festivals?
Okay, so I'm going to give a little history, so bear with me. I came to Superfest actually as a filmmaker. So I submitted my short in 2020, and it did not have audio description. It had captions, but not audio description. And so I was just unaware at the time, and I felt really embarrassed. And I was like, how dare I not have that a part of my film? And so Superfest came back and they said, you know, you need to add it to your film in order for us to accept it. And so I took the time, I learned about audio descriptions as much as I could, and I did it myself because I had researched like companies that would do it for you. And it made me angry because they were just robotic and boring. And I cannot handle things that are boring. I just cannot do it. And so my film was a comedy. So I made it witty, I made it funny. But what I did notice, which has made me reframe my whole way of like writing films, of thinking about the way I'm going to direct them, is that my film was too quick in its pacing, right? There wasn't enough space for the audio descriptions to breathe. And so in like the next script I wrote after that, I left room in there. I like planned it out in my head of what was going to happen. And so it was just Superfest saying that to me really shifted my whole perspective on filmmaking. But now we provide audio descriptions. We have them done for filmmakers. One, because it is an equity issue of like, are filmmakers able to afford getting it done? If they cannot do it themselves, do they not have the technology? We can do it for them. And so we use a company who is very good at it to audio describe and to make captions. And then we also give filmmakers a week to go over those captions and the audio description and make any changes they would like before things get cemented. And so in that way, we are doing like what Krishna and Cheryl said, making sure that their vision is prioritized. And so then at the festival, we have it where people can watch the films with captions. All the films are open captioned for the in-person screenings. And then we use an app called All4Access. where people can, with their phones. We also provide devices if they don't bring one, and headphones. They can listen to the audio descriptions if they would like. And that is, we don't do open audio descriptions just because some people, it can be like sensory overload sometimes. And so, yeah, I think we have found a good balance at our festival of prioritizing needs.
I love that. I want to get to Kibo, but I have a quick question for you, Shayna. Can you tell us more about this app? I've been talking to so many people of like, we have these phones in our pockets. How can we utilize this technology best, paired with being able to provide devices? I love that you're still providing that, but I'm not familiar with that app. And so I would love to learn like a little more how that works and just how you work with the app. Is there a cost associated with it? And just more things so other folks may be able to incorporate it into their practice.
So the All for Access app is basically a system you like download it onto your phone beforehand. And we provide information of how to do that on our website. We actually have a whole page of like how the app works and what it does at superfestfilm.com. And basically, once you load it up during the screening, the audio will sync. So the audio descriptions will sync to the actual screening that's going to play. And it takes about a minute to do so. So we have a minute of filler audio where it's just music until it syncs up completely. And then you're watching a film with everybody else at the same time, and you have audio descriptions on it.
That's really great, because there's one of the boundaries that I hear, or barriers that I hear from a lot of festival organizers. It's like, well, we only exist for like 1 week a year, and we don't necessarily have the staff to purchase all the equipment and run it. I still feel like pairing it with actual description devices is great, but having this as potentially a stepping stool for folks as they're implementing access and acquiring these devices and learning about it, it does seem like a good option for folks to have, which is really exciting. Yeah, Kibo, I would love, very similarly, I know QuackMap has a very similar policy to Superfest. If you could kind of walk us through what your policy is and how you came to get to the point where you said we are going to have captions for everything and we're going to have audio description. Like, what was that mind shift for your festival?
So we started much earlier with captions than audio description for a few reasons. We were really trying to figure out how to do audio description with film and how to do it well. So we started with captions, and what that meant was getting filmmakers used to submitting their films with captions. So when people submit, that is one of the requirements, is your film has to have captions. Interestingly enough, Storm Miguel is actually a QuackMap filmmaker, has been through our program. So that is a requirement for all films. We actually have a series of specs that we send out to filmmakers, like here's how to do your captions, here's how they can look. This is like what we found is best. Also considering like whether it's high contrast, where they're placed, that kind of thing. So we can send those resources to filmmakers to help them make that happen. So that is one thing that we require. We started doing that about a decade ago. And it was really driven by who we have in community with us, right? So we had a really great intern who was hard of hearing then and has progressively gotten more deaf over time. And as she was doing the work, we had some films, especially Spanish language or in languages other than English, where she could really understand and see those and kind of really absorb the film. But then we had other films that didn't have full captions. And so it really impeded the work that we were all able to do together. Well, that didn't work. And that wasn't a good thing. So the very next year, we just started requiring them. And we gave some support to filmmakers to get used to that. But now filmmakers know that is just absolutely The deal, we will actually refuse films if they don't send them in with captions. And that's full open captions of all the audio, the sound design, everything, not just the speaking roles, which is what people tend to do. But we really want it to be absolutely complete. And the other piece is that we're really, because we're an organization of folks of color, we're really looking at the cultural facets. So what does this word mean in this context for this group of people? I used to do poetry in multiple languages. So I always want to make sure that the sensibility is coming through as well. We did have one time when we were working with a particular film, and this is on audio description, and the way that the word was described was kind of their hearing of it and what they thought the word was, but it actually has a specific connotation in Mandarin, and they were missing that. So when we have films, we just double check to make sure is the cultural facet coming through. And we've taken what we've learned from captioning and open captions to do that for audio description. Because as Krishna said, we want people to have the full experience. There's a number of films that have, I would say, very distinct cultural and spiritual aesthetics that really aid to understanding the film. If you look at something like Daughters of the Dust, for example, it is all up and through that particular film, and many more films that have come out since maybe contain Yoruba or Ifa spirituality. And so that's the symbols, right? The semiotics need to be included in the audio description so that folks have that full cultural experience that they're getting visually. So we've really made sure that each thing that we're doing is complete. And that it makes sense culturally. And I can't emphasize that enough. So we actually have our board review all of the audio description scripts to make sure that we catch it. And our board is representative of the community we serve. So all different ethnicities, backgrounds. And so we're not missing words, we're not missing spirituality, we're not missing all of those things that are deeply meaningful to filmmakers and audiences. And one of the things that we do is we do support filmmakers by paying for the audio description. And we're hoping at some point in time, we can start getting our community to do the audio description so they don't miss some of those nuances that companies tend to miss.
I love all this. I mean, it's such a great model for folks to learn from, right? Like, you didn't get to this accessibility overnight, right? I think that's the thing that scares people, but you started someplace and you set a precedent and you grew into it over time to now it's just an expectation for open captions, and hopefully you can get there with audio description. And I think that is such a useful tool for other festival organizers who, you know, I'm curious, Kibo, if you've ever gotten any negative feedback from this, because I hear from people that this could be a potential reason to not mandate captions. I personally don't know that that is exactly the case, but I'm curious if you did have any of that feedback and what that was like to work through as an organization to hold your line and move forward.
I'm kind of smiling about it. Not out of like humor, but just sort of that bitter haha kind of just response. Because I think there's a piece here where that is coming so deeply out of ableism that folks don't even say, and I like to name the thing what it is. So, and I think QuackMap likes to name the thing for what it is versus just sort of hemming and hawing and pretending it's anything other than just blatant ableism. And I think with that type of clarity and our values, we're able to say, really, this is not okay. And we're okay if you don't want to submit your film to us. Too bad, because our audiences are amazing and our community is amazing. But this is like the line for us, and we're not going to compromise on that. We will definitely help people figure it out, but it's not one of those things, well, yeah, it's okay. We'll just let this slide. Like I said before, we have refused films, just like we refuse other types of films that may contain xenophobia and other things like that. It's really understanding that this is key to not only the filmmaker getting their message across, but the communities being able to enjoy and experience that. And so I think as more kind of backlash or pushback happens, we just very clearly state what we are expecting, and we let people take that as they will. We also got a lot of pushback for our COVID protocols, and our whole response was, look, we're immunocompromised ourselves. Our whole goal of organizing our film festival is not to get our staff sick, right? Much less the audience. And so we're asking for you to help and partner with us to make this happen so more people can actually enjoy and be a part of this community. And so I think the folks that just clearly have some learning to do, I'll say it like that, have removed themselves, and then other people really feel like, okay, this is a space I can be in. When we came back after a couple of years of having only an online film festival, so many sick and disabled folks were like, hey, this is the one safe space I can be in. And that for us was like, okay, we met our goal, which was don't get anybody sick, and made sure that, again, we're not compromising on that, because it's about the health and well-being of our entire community.
I just love that. It's so essential, right? It's like really looking as an organization and what are my values? What are our values? And let's live them and look at what that really means. And accessibility is a core part of that. You know, we've heard so many organizations, and especially the past 5 years, talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And accessibility is so very often left off that list, and is also one of the few categories that crosses all. Like Cheryl said, there is no, it's disability crosses all boundaries, right? So I mean, we could talk about this forever. I told you all I was not going to get through the whole agenda. So we only have about 15 more minutes. So let me think. I think what I'd like to talk about a little bit is just communication, right? And I feel like this is a huge part of accessibility that people don't consider as necessary. But it is a huge part of being clear with your communication, direct with your communication, not hiding that information. And I know, Cheryl, you do not run a festival, but I have personally received very good feedback from you about being clear and concise with information. And so I would love to hear from you about the importance of that clarity and to not hide that information and just be really honest.
Well, I think there is if we build it, they'll just somehow know we built it and they'll show up because we're great. And it's not happening. And so then when you don't advertise and people don't show up, you say, well, I guess caption users and AD users don't want to come to my thing. They year after year, they don't come. And this is not about you, your festival, or your film. This is about providing these things to bring your audience in. And so many of my captioning and audio description clients put me on their film mailing lists. And so I see all the screenings that are coming up. And I would say the times that these things list captions is literally 0. And I unsubscribe from their mailing lists. I've had people ask, hey, will you blast about my film screening? Cheryl, you made my captions. Will you blast over here? Yes. And I blast and I add the captions. Go on Facebook, every advertisement, no captions, never. And it's offensive. It's super offensive. You paid a lot of money. We spent a lot of time on them, and you are accidentally just devaluing them. I mean, you're erasing them. So if I don't want people who rely on these pieces of accessibility to constantly have to ask, if you make the advertising clear, here's the access that's on offer, and use nice, clean, plain language that a lot of people are going to be likely to be able to follow. High contrast on the page for people who are accessing it visually. None of those weird fonts, weird backgrounds. When you put it there and people feel welcomed, oh, I know I can access this. If year after year, a festival has not provided access, then they start to, but don't advertise, I truly truly in my heart don't know why they think people are going to know the access is there. So I am proud about the yelling emails I've sent to Sundance. What the F is going on with your website? I know I audio described these 2 films and I can't find that information. How do you expect people? So if you don't advertise it, then you did the captions and audio description for yourself. The end. Once you start to advertise, then I know that you are doing it for the audience. You're bringing in and caring for the audience. And I can't again stress enough the clear language, short sentences, nice and crisp, easy to follow, easy to remember, clear. No apologies. It doesn't have to be, I'm so sorry, but this year we couldn't afford. No, just what do we have? What do we have to work with? And trust the community to spread the word. Hey, this one's got captions. Let's go to it.
I love that. It's such a seemingly easy thing that does not happen. And it is so important. And it devalues the work of your staff, right? Your staff that have worked hard on learning about accessibility and making the event accessible if you don't make it clear. And you're not doing anyone any services when you hide information. You're actually potentially causing harm by hiding information. In our last final minutes, Krishna, I wonder if you have any experience as a filmmaker taking this film to festivals. What has your experience been with being able to screen it with access accommodations? Have you been able to get audio description played at your film at festivals? Does it feel like a fight, or what has that journey been like?
Well, Telephone has native open audio description, so that is never a concern. It also has native captions and native ASL interpretation from the beginning to the end, and that's the only version of Telephone that exists. You cannot play Telephone without hearing audio description and without having captions and ASL interpretation. So I never need to worry about that. As it pertains to accessing websites, my co-director has to do the applications on Film Freeway for us because that website is incompatible with my accessibility software. So we end up having to be on the phone and she's like, okay, this is about the disabled director section. Can you tell me what to put in here? I'm like, listen, I'm a blind lady. I love being on the phone. I'll be on the phone all day, all night. But if you are advertising, oh, we want disabled filmmakers to submit, you should make sure that like your applications are actually compatible with screen reader technology. Otherwise, maybe they don't have like a sighted co-director that they can call up on the phone and be like, can you help me with this in a sad voice? There's a lot of things that have become ubiquitous in work, including things like Google Docs, Google Sheets, that when I open them, I hear nothing. My screen reader doesn't know it's there. There's a lot, actually, I would say that websites and the internet have become less accessible and less compatible with my accessibility software over the years. And I use a very, very like flexible setup. I use, a combination of like instant read and also mouse over. Like I'm flexible, like I'm ready to attack the internet and do stuff. But I really feel as if that extra step of making sure that somebody who is an expert in website accessibility goes over your website and actually makes sure that people who use different types of accessibility software can use it is really, really important. As somebody who has attended a lot of films and attended a lot of live shows, especially, I love what Cheryl said about advertising language. I like it when the phrase audio description available upon request is written, because then I know, okay, so there's not actually audio description. It means that they will call somebody up on the phone and have them panic and show up to a show that they don't know any more about than you do. And first of all, when you are in appropriate working cooperation with your audio describer for your project, for every 1 minute of material in that art piece that you submit, that's an hour minimum of work for your audio describer. And if you expect somebody to be able to spit it out on the spot, that's really not respecting their professional expertise. And that's not respecting the disabled people in your audience who need that person's expertise. Audio description is not something that you tack on at the very end. And I loved what Shana said about thinking about even pacing films. Like, oh, I would like my audio describer to have a gap of air to say really important things to this audience. Like, that is so beautiful and so precious. And especially also what Kibo said about really saying to people who submit, like, it's not acceptable to leave out this component of access because maybe it's harder to understand, or maybe it takes more time. If this becomes a normal part of the filmmaking process, we won't think of it that way anymore. And as for free resources, my classes in audio description are tuition free. They will be and will always be. And I have 5 workshops coming up in January and February. So if you would like to have help for free from an audio description teacher, it's coming your way real soon. And that's a free thing. And when I advertise my classes, whether it's ballet class, anatomy class, audio description class, I always say, these classes are designed for the learning needs of blind and visually impaired people. Even in my audio description classes, the bulk of my students are blind and visually impaired people. And for the audio describers that study there, in that kind of space, in the blind space, and get to really understand like how we talk about art and why we care about it, I feel all that can do is create more energy in the direction of making accessible art for people.
I love that, Krishna. Thank you so much. I have so much more I want to ask you all, but we're out of time. I would highly recommend that our anyone watching this visit the Superfest website, visit the QuackMap website. If you're looking for how to care for your audiences, how to create clear communication, how to really message accessibility and the values of accessibility, both of these festivals do an amazing job. And I really appreciate all the care and intention that goes into those. And, you know, what you were saying, Krishna, it's so true. And we even heard it with Shana, right? The first time you submitted to Superfest, you didn't have audio description. And then you learned, and there you go. Next time, now you've thought about it totally differently. And you can never go back once you start, right? Man, there's so much value that you all have. So thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate you. And I hope that we've just started to scratch the surface to get organizers to think about not only why this is important, but how they can go about this in a way that feels authentic, that feels true, that feels like art, and not just a box to check or a compliance, as Cheryl said, to meet, but how accessibility can really bring you in closer community with your audience, can create care and love and welcoming and show some great art. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.